Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada,
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jai Jai
Nitai Go Hari Go, Hari Go, Hari Go, Nitai Go Hari Go. Om Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granthraj Prabhupada Lilamrta ki jai. Smavet Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Nitai Gopuramanande Hari Hari. Om Gyanantimivandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapara Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsta. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, just to set the scene of this wonderful, beautiful chapter, Srila Prabhupada struggled for us. Here we see Srila Prabhupada apparently completely alone, he does not even have somebody to carry an umbrella. He's using a plastic wrapper to protect him from the rain, with a strong desire to spread Krishna consciousness for us and all souls in this world. And Srila Prabhupada tolerated so many inconveniences. And in this chapter, we're going to also read how Srila Prabhupada had a stroke, heart attack, paralyzed. He was paralyzed on one side of his body, and to recuperate, Srila Prabhupada decided to come to San Francisco and spend some time to become better, to regain his health. And when one disciple asked Srila Prabhupada, "How are you doing?" When in San Francisco, Srila Prabhupada started telling him, "What is this body? This body is not really comfortable anyway. Our real focus is the spiritual side." So Prabhupada, even though he wasn't interested on the material platform, he was giving Krishna consciousness. Still, Prabhupada knew that he needed good health to continue spreading Krishna consciousness. And then we see how Srila Prabhupada, tolerating, becoming more healthy after returning from India, continued to spread Krishna consciousness with so many disciples, so many centers, 108 centers across the globe. And therefore, we should really be grateful to Srila Prabhupada. And that gratitude can be shown by how much we receive and appreciate and use what Srila Prabhupada had given us. Srila Prabhupada in a lecture says, "You should read all this." You are not reading. These things are explained in the first volume of the Bhagavata, but I don't think you read it at all. Did you read? If you haven't read, you will feel uneasy. "Oh, let me go from Japan to India, from India to Japan." You are restless because you are not reading. I'm working so hard for you, but you are not taking advantage of this opportunity. Don't take advantage of food and sleep. Take advantage of these books. Then your life will be successful. It is my duty to give you such valuable things, spending days and nights trying to convince you, one word after another. And if you are not taking advantage of this, then what can I do for you? So, first ever Ratha Yatra in the West. This chapter, Srila Prabhupada encourages his disciples to do the first Ratha Yatra. And here we see the first Ratha Yatra car that Srila Prabhupada personally drew for the devotees. And then we find the actual poster, 1967, the first Ratha Yatra poster. This is the first car festival, San Francisco, Sunday, 9th July. This is the poster that they had put all over. And then in 1968, this is the poster, a little more refined. Now they have some design font there, Ratha Yatra Festival. This is also in 1969, another poster. So we are blessed that Srila Prabhupada took this festival from India to the West. In the Brahmanda Purana, it is said, a person who sees the Lord's Ratha Yatra car festival and then stands up to receive the Lord can purge all kinds of sinful results from his body. A similar statement is there in the Bhavishya Puran, in which it is said, a person who follows the Ratha Yatra car, when the Rathas, the deities, pass in front or from behind, even if born of a lowly family, will surely be elevated to the position of achieving equal opulence with Vishnu. So no doubt Srila Prabhupada has created such unimaginable good fortune for all the souls in this world. Now we have Ratha Yatra in practically every major country around the world. How glorious is that gift to the world that Srila Prabhupada has personally bestowed upon us. So I'm going to do a quick summary of this beautiful chapter. So 6 July 1967, Srila Prabhupada arrives at the San Francisco airport, and Srila Prabhupada visits the Radha Krishna temple, bowed before the smiling Jagannath deities, and departed for Stinson Beach. At Stinson Beach, Srila Prabhupada stayed in a single-story, 6-room house near the Pacific Ocean to recuperate. Then Kirtananda Prabhu and Upendra Prabhu stayed and served Srila Prabhupada there. At the first night, Srila Prabhupada felt pain in his heart and couldn't sleep. Srila Prabhupada chanted his japa in bed by sitting up. Kirtananda Prabhu regularly massaged Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada would take daily walks. On July 8, Shyam Sundar and Mukunda Prabhus came to Srila Prabhupada, and they shared the Ratha Yatra festival preparations with Srila Prabhupada. After the first American Ratha Yatra, Srila Prabhupada received the deities, and the devotees shared their experiences with him. We can just understand Srila Prabhupada was so ill that he could not make it for this festival. Srila Prabhupada would not miss this first Ratha Yatra for anything. But Prabhupada could not even get out of bed. That is how ill he was. In the evening, Srila Prabhupada explained to the devotees about the nature of this world full of anxiety. Srila Prabhupada talked on going to India and wrote a letter to Srimati Morarji about his returning with some disciples to train. Srila Prabhupada waited for sufficient strength to travel and continued his daily routine at Stinson Beach. The devotees discovered a picture of Lord Nrsingadev when they moved the piano for Srila Prabhupada to play. Some evenings, Srila Prabhupada would speak or arrange debates, and Srila Prabhupada could not stop himself but get involved. Prabhupada was recuperating, and he was meant to be the judge. But Prabhupada could, when he gave the roles to the two devotees, and they started, and Prabhupada couldn't contain himself. He was meant to be a patient, relaxing, taking rest, and he's meant to be the judge, but he got involved in the debate and he started debating, taking roles. The devotees were concerned about Srila Prabhupada leaving forever and how they would continue. And this chapter really brings us out that for Prabhupada, for the devotees, Srila Prabhupada was everything. He guided them in every facet of life, especially in spiritual life. And now Prabhupada was thinking of going to India, and they did not know whether Prabhupada would ever come back. So they really felt a great separation just by the thought of Srila Prabhupada leaving. Srila Prabhupada initiated the new followers in San Francisco from his bed without fire ceremony, one night at a time. Srila Prabhupada was so ill that he had to initiate one disciple per evening. Chant rounds, chant them on the Japamala, initiate them, and the next day, this is how the devotees came one by one. Srila Prabhupada decided to go to India via New York. They drove to San Francisco to spend the night at the temple and leave the next morning. Srila Prabhupada had an evening program and gave initiation there as well. He encouraged devotees to continue the preaching mission. During the lecture, Ravindra Sarup unhappily entered the temple room crying. Srila Prabhupada encouraged him, but he decided to leave Srila Prabhupada. The next morning, Srila Prabhupada had to leave his affectionate followers. Several cars filled with devotees accompanied him to the San Francisco airport. Srila Prabhupada shared his one desire before taking the flight that will please him very much. Prabhupada told the devotees that we got a temple here, temple there, temple. If you open up a temple in Los Angeles, I will be very, very happy. Srila Prabhupada arrives in New York and telegraphed Sri Krishna Pandit that his arrival in Delhi will be on 24th July at 7:30 a.m. The day before his departure, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Swamiji Morarji again, encouraging her to give passage to his disciples. And Prabhupada actually wrote to she replied, and she said she can't give the disciples a free passage. She can only give him. And Prabhupada said because of his ill health, the disciples made arrangement to organize a flight for Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was taking a flight, and he encouraged her that please, you cannot do it now, but in the future, if you can, please, it's important. And Prabhupada was encouraging her by explaining how Krishna consciousness was spreading, and that he was getting it was being received such nicely, so that she could be encouraged to help bring the disciples to India. 30 minutes before leaving for the airport, Srila Prabhupada sat in his room, chanting on his beads of a girl who had asked to be initiated. Srila Prabhupada spoke to the devotees for the last time, encouraging them to continue Krishna consciousness. Several devotees rode with Srila Prabhupada in a taxi to the airport. Devotees converged on the Air India waiting room, and Srila Prabhupada asked Kirtananda Prabhu to play the Hare Krishna record, after which they both boarded the plane. The devotees chanted wildly while boarding steps moved away, the doors closed, and the plane began to turn. The devotees continued to chant Hare Krishna until the plane left. The ground became a speck in the sky and disappeared. So Srila Prabhupada arrives on the 6th of July, 1967. Here we see Srila Prabhupada leaving the New York temple, going to San Francisco to recuperate. The chapter starts off, at the San Francisco airport, Prabhupada smiled, but said little as the devotees greeted him with flowers and kirtan. It was different this time. He walked straight ahead with the aid of a cane. Jayananda was waiting with his station wagon to drive Prabhupada to a private house they had rented north of the city at Stinson Beach. But first, Prabhupada said he wanted to visit the San Francisco Radha Krishna temple. Jayananda drove to 518 Frederick Street. Prabhupada got out of the car and entered the small storefront, which was filled with waiting devotees and guests. He bowed before the smiling Jagannath deities and, without speaking a word, left the room, returned to the car, and departed for Stinson Beach. The ride up through the seaside cliffs was so winding and climbing that Prabhupada became nauseated. And even lying down in the back seat and having Jayananda drive slowly didn't help much. Kirtanand realized that it would be too difficult for Prabhupada to visit the San Francisco temple from Stinson Beach, but maybe that would be just as well. He could spend all the time recuperating. So Prabhupada was definitely very, very ill. And here we see the temple right at the bottom here, the Radha Krishna temple in Haight-Ashbury. Here's, because of the first Ratha Yatra, immediately after the Ratha Yatra, Srila Prabhupada named the temple New Jagannatha Puri. And we see the temple with the deities, Prabhupada giving a talk at the temple. And these were the initial disciples of Srila Prabhupada, with Srila Prabhupada in the center, that were in the San Francisco temple. Just reading the disciples' names from number 1, Karunamai Dasi, Jayananda Das, Yamuna Dasi, Chidananda Das, Jivananda Das, Govinda Dasi, Harsha Rani Dasi, Murari Das, Srila Prabhupada himself, Uddhava Das, Lilamrta Dasi, Shyamasundar Das, Kartikeya Das, Gaurasundar Das, Upendra Das, Subala Das, Malati Dasi, Krishna Das, Kargamuni Das, and Sharidiya Dasi. So these were the early disciples in the San Francisco temple. So Srila Prabhupada arrives at this house. Here's a picture of this house that Srila Prabhupada arrived at Stinson Beach. The devotees, Mother Janaki and them had rented this house. It was a modern single-story, 6-room house with a Japanese roof. A sign out front read, Paradiso. Srila Prabhupada noticed in the front yard, amidst fashionable lawn furniture, a statue of Lord Buddha, a garden ornament. When Prabhupada entered the house, he found Mukunda and his wife Janaki waiting for him. They bowed down and Janaki wept in happiness. Prabhupada smiled but kept walking slowly and silently through the house. The large living room overlooking the Pacific Ocean was decorated with some of Jadurani's paintings of Lord Vishnu, Radha and Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, as well as the Indian prince of Jagannatha Puri. Prabhupada's bedroom, also facing the ocean, had sliding windows. On the wall was a portrait of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and a painting of Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada smiled and said the paintings were very nice. The devotees agreed that only Kirtananda and Upendra would stay and serve Swamiji. They wanted Swamiji to stay to be peaceful so that his health could improve. When Prabhupada arrived at this house, he was very pleased, and he asked Mother Janaki what is the cost of renting this place, and how long do they have it for? And she explained that actually they got the rent for 1 month, and Prabhupada was surprised that they allowed you to rent it for 1 month only. And she says yes, and Prabhupada said very nice. And how much where are you getting the money? Where's the money coming from? And she said, no, Prabhupada, all the devotees pitched in little. Jayananda is driving taxi and is giving his funds. Different devotees are working, and they're all pulling funds together, and this is how they came out with the funds to pay for the 1 month rent. Prabhupada was staying there. They rented this place for a few weeks, and it's right in front of the Pacific Ocean. So when Srila Prabhupada would go for his morning walk, he loved walking on the beach, and even after during the Ratha Yatra parade, Prabhupada, 1 year Prabhupada went for the parade, and in front of the Pacific Ocean, when the devotees ended there with the festival, and Prabhupada was chanting Jam Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Parivachakacharya, and he continued with the prayers, and at the end Prabhupada said, all glories to the Pacific Ocean, all glories to the Pacific Ocean, all glories to the Pacific Ocean. That was the only time Prabhupada included the Pacific Ocean. So, Vijay, completely Krishna conscious. As Prabhupada walked on the beach, he pointed his cane towards some bubbles in the sand. Just see, he said, there are living entities everywhere. There is no space without living entities, and yet they say there is no life on the moon. The beach was rocky, and there were cliffs, and there were cliffs where the waves crashed powerfully, like thunder. You hear the sound? Srila Prabhupada asked. This is an echo of the gopis' heartbeats when they are feeling separation from Krishna. So Prabhupada's walking on the beach, he's hearing the sound of the waves hitting the cliffs, the rocks, and usually we would hear the sound and that's all we hear, the waves hitting. But Prabhupada been so Krishna conscious, so absorbed, completely Krishna conscious, that he was hearing not just waves hitting the cliffs, but he was hearing the gopis' heartbeats when they feel separation from Krishna. Completely Krishna conscious. Another time, Srila Prabhupada, it was raining like anything, and Prabhupada jumped into the car. And generally when it's raining very heavily, you see the raindrops hit the windscreen, and you get like large drops hitting on the windscreen. So Prabhupada looked at the drops, and he turned to the devotee who was driving, and he said, see these drops? They like the gopis' tears when they feel separation from Krishna. So here Prabhupada is hearing the gopis' heartbeats, and when Prabhupada saw the rain, he saw the gopis' tears. So completely Krishna conscious, Vrindavan consciousness. When we now go to the ocean and we hear the waves hit, we can remember the statement of Srila Prabhupada. And when we see the rain, we can remember Prabhupada's statement. He walked for an hour until his 2 young servants were both tired. Do I tire you walking? He laughed. This walking and massaging are saving my life from day to day. Then he continued walking. Now Srila Prabhupada's, he's at a late 60, 70 years of age. And his disciples are young, in their 20s, yet, and he's sick. Yet Srila Prabhupada's walking tired the disciples. This was Prabhupada's complete youthfulness that was there. The disciples could not keep up with Srila Prabhupada. And this is also what, attracted them to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was like a mystical personality. Everyone could understand all those disciples, all those guests that would come and see Srila Prabhupada, visit Srila Prabhupada. throughout his life, they could sense that this person is not of this world. This person knows Krishna, and this person is coming from the spiritual world. So even just from a simple walk, the devotees could understand he's no ordinary person. By 11 o'clock, the sun finally appeared over the mountains, and through the clouds, Srila Prabhupada, his head wrapped with a towel, sat in a folding chair on the beach, talking in the sunshine. He kept saying he needed some sun. He needed more sun. After lunch, the sky was again overcast. In the evening, Prabhupada called Kirtananda and Upendra into the large living room and led them in a subdued kirtan, singing Hare Krishna and Govinda Jaya Jaya. He stood and led them in a large circle around the room. He would stop before the picture of Krishna, bow slightly with folded hands, turn around, and then continue in the circle. So Prabhupada, even with his two disciples, had a full program. He had kirtan with them and danced in the room in circles. And here we see Prabhupada didn't distinguish between deities and the picture of Krishna. The picture of Krishna is also a deity form of the Lord. There's 8 different forms of the Lord and a deity picture. But a picture is also a form of the Lord. And Prabhupada recognized that, therefore, even while going in kirtan, Prabhupada did not want to show his back to the deities and would offer pranams and turn around. Prabhupada's idea for Ratha Yatra. On July 8th, after Prabhupada had been at Paradiso for 2 days, Shyamsundar and Mukunda drove up from San Francisco. The next day was to be Ratha Yatra, and Shyamsundar and Mukunda, the first devotees to visit Prabhupada since his arrival at Stinson Beach, told Prabhupada all about the festival preparations. Of course, the whole festival had been Prabhupada's idea, but the devotees in San Francisco were trying to do exactly as he had asked. Srila Prabhupada had first gotten the idea for the festival while looking out the window of his room above Frederick Street. Noticing flatbed trucks passing below, he thought of putting Jagannath deities on the back of such a truck and conducting an American-style Ratha Yatra festival. He had even sketched a truck with a 4-pillared canopy on the back and decorated with flags, bells, and flower garlands. And he called in Shyamsundar, "Make me this cart for Ratha Yatra." Now ready and sitting outside the temple on Frederick Street was a cart, a yellow Hertz rental truck, compliments of the diggers, and complete with a 5-foot column and a pyramidal cloth canopy. And here we see a picture of the canopy for the pillars, and the deities were placed on the truck. Srila Prabhupada told them exactly how to place their lordships on the truck, and also how to lead the procession. So Prabhupada, when he saw the flatbed truck, he immediately could understand this would be a wonderful way to start the festival. And naturally, the devotees were inspired. And from this first festival, this festival started to expand year after year. And we will see how it expanded just now. Mr. Ratha Yatra. Sitting with Prabhupada on the beach, Mukunda told how all the devotees were working with great enthusiasm, and how the hippies in Haight-Ashbury were talking about the Jagannath parade that would take place the next day. The devotees had tried to route the parade through Golden Gate Park, but the police department would only give permission for them to go south down Frederick Street to the sea. Mukunda said that the devotees planned to have Jagannath under the canopy facing the right side of the truck, Subhadra facing the rear, and Balaram facing the left side. He wanted to know if that was all right. Actually, Prabhupada said the deities should ride in separate carts, pulled by ropes by the crowds through the streets. Maybe that could happen in future years. Do it nicely, he cautioned them, and don't hurry it up. The devotees should drive the truck slowly through the street down to the beach, and there should be constant kirtan. Mukunda and Shamasundar glorified Jayananda. He drove all around San Francisco getting donations of fruits and flowers, found people to help decorate the cart, install the sound system on the truck, and distributed posters in the stores. He was tireless, and his enthusiasm was inspiring everyone else to take part. The women had been cooking chapatis all day, so there should be thousands to give away to the crowd. The devotees had prepared hundreds of Hare Krishna Ratha Yatra festival balloons to release on the street as the parade began. When the devotees asked what else they should do, Prabhupada said that this was all a procession, prasadam distribution, and kirtan. The people should get a chance to see Lord Jagannath and chant Hare Krishna. They should be chanting and dancing in front of the cart throughout the procession, but do everything nicely, Prabhupada said. Do it well as you can. Lord Jagannath will be satisfied. So Mr. Ratha Yatra, Jayananda Prabhu, his enthusiasm for this festival is no doubt exemplary and exceptional. He worked tirelessly, and there's so many wonderful pastimes of Jayananda. In fact, Jayananda would, during this festival, he obviously used the flatbed truck, but in the future years, he personally built the chariots. They started off, I think, yeah, it will come. They started off with one, chariot, then he built three, and every year they would build those chariots, and he would get everything sponsored. This was because of his amazing personality. He would get everything sponsored. He would engage everyone. The one time Jayananda was working, and there was a plank with a nail, and it so happened that he unfortunately stepped onto that wooden plank with a nail, and the nail went through his foot. And even that did not stop him from continuing to serve. He carried on working throughout the night. And the devotees, they share that he would work for day after day after day for the whole week, preparing, practically without sleeping. And on the festival day, it would be like he was fully rested, dancing throughout the whole procession, being so enthusiastic. So he was no doubt very, very, very exemplary. And in fact, when he left, Srila Prabhupada said that he was ISKCON's first saint, and that we should celebrate his disappearance day just like we celebrate the previous Acharya's disappearance day, just before Lord Nishingadev's appearance day. Shri Jayananda Prabhu ki jai. So 9th July 1967, the first Ratha Yatra in the Western world. I am most certain, 100% definite, that all the demigods were present during this festival. No doubt, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, everyone was present for this festival, where Lord Jagannath is going out in the streets in the West. It is inconceivable. In the miracle on 2nd Avenue, Mukunda Goswami, he writes, outside the deities were now on the truck ready to go. Subhadra looking straight out back. Jagannath and Baladev facing either side. About 10 people sat on the flatbed, their legs dangling off the edges of the truck, holding handfuls of smoking incense. A large kirtan party with cartels, drums, tambourines, and flutes chanted besides the stationary truck. The speaker system we use in Golden Gate Park was fixed to the back of the truck. The large speakers positioned between the canopy and the driver's cabin. The amplifier was powered by Tiny Tiger. We'll speak about Tiny Tiger just now, which sat next to the devotees on the wooden truck bed. So here we see the picture of, picture of the Ratha Yatra. Maybe the DT or there's a devotees, please avoid using the scribble notes. Otherwise, it'll be there for the whole slideshow. Please avoid that. Let's just see if I can. So let's avoid using the annotation. In fact, for the future ones, you can actually deactivate the annotations. Okay, so here we see the picture of the first Ratha Yatra procession underway. Here's the car from the front, and here the deities themselves. So it's described when they started the Kirtan, they had to amplify the sound. So they used this tiny tiger generator, and they had the generator there on the cart. They started it up, and Mukunda Prabhu started singing. Unfortunately, the tiny tiger made such a noise that it practically drowned the amplification Kirtan. So now the devotees, Mukunda Prabhu went to Shamsun Prabhu and says, you know what, we have to do something. So they decided, okay, maybe we should, have another car right in front and put the tiny tiger in the car, and then have a cord coming to the amplification speakers. And then they thought, well, that will be dangerous because we're going to have a cord, so that may not work. So then Shamsundar said, well, why don't you put it, with me in the driver's section? And Mukunda said, no, you can't do that because the fumes will practically kill you, and the sound will make you deaf by the time the festival's over. And he said, no, it's fine. Let's do that. So as Shamsundar sacrificed him, he's breathing these fumes, and he decided to put. So they put the tiny tiger in the front, started the powered it up, and Mukunda started singing on the back, and the fumes obviously were increasing. So after about 30 minutes, Mukunda Prabhu was concerned about Shamsundar, so he got somebody else to sing, and then he came down and he jumped with Shamsundar, and he could, naturally he could see this, the whole thing was smoke. So he said, no, we have to do something. So they said, okay, what they'll do is they'll open the window, they'll open the window for 1 minute and then close the window, try to hold their breath, and then put the window down for another minute, put the window up, and in this way, go through the festival like that. And that's how they managed. In fact, when they were doing this, they both were thinking the newspaper headlines: Hare Krishnas die due to fumes, while the public, are in ecstasy chanting. And just when they're just thinking of this, they were, laughing so much. So they were in total ecstasy. They didn't even think this was a botheration. They were in total ecstasy, because just you can consider, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that if you have a Harinam in a new place, he will personally come there with the previous acharyas. What to talk about having a Ratha Yatra for the first time in the West? No doubt the previous acharyas, and as I said, all the demigods, no doubt were present. So this festival, the experience must have been so amazing. So the devotees, they enjoyed this festival. And I have a clip here, so I'm going to show this clip. This clip will show a kirtan in the temple, and then it'll show a small piece of the procession. And just try to place yourself and understand the people that Srila Prabhupada was preaching to, as well as the power, the potency, the mercy that's flowing. Prabhupada's desire, Prabhupada's prayers that these people be transformed by the kirtan and by their lordships. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki Jai. So after the festival, Srila Prabhupada could not make it, and Upendra Prabhu actually phoned the Mukunda Prabhu phoned Upendra Prabhu and found out that Srila Prabhupada is coming. And Upendra Prabhu said, no, Prabhupada is in bed and he will not be able to make it. So the devotees told, they said, please send Srila Prabhupada a message that we're going to try our best to follow his instructions, as he said, and try to please him by this wonderful service. So then next day in the quiet afternoon, Prabhupada was sitting in the living room, chanting on his beads. Upendra was with him, and Kirtananda was in the kitchen cooking a feast. Suddenly, Prabhupada heard a familiar ringing of cymbals, and he became very happy. His eyes widening. Looking outside, he saw the Ratha Yatra truck with Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram, and dozens of devotees and hippies eager to see him. He went out to greet them and had them bring the deities inside and set them on top of the upright piano. Devotees and guests followed. Filling the large living room, smiling, Prabhupada embraced some of the men, while others made obeisances at his feet. Some devotees helped Kirtananda in the kitchen get ready to distribute the large feast he had prepared. Others reported on the success of the Ratha Yatra festival. It was great. It was wonderful. It was a beautiful day, they said. And Prabhupada listened, moved by his disciples' description of the celebration. Many hippies had joined the large procession. Mukunda, Haridas, Hayagriva, and some of the women had been on the cart, and the instruments, including Yamuna's playing on the harmonium, had all been amplified. Everyone in the street had liked it. The police motor escort had tried to hurry the devotees, but so many people had crowded in front that the parade had been obliged to go slowly, just as Swamiji had asked. Subal had danced wildly the whole time, and Jayananda had been jumping up and down playing cartels. From the truck, some of the women had handed out oranges, apples, and bananas, and others had thrown flowers. The crowd had loved it. Shamsundar told how they had been going up a steep hill. Shamsundar had been driving with his dog, Ralph, beside him on the front seat. When the truck had stalled, it had tried to start the engine but couldn't. Then the brakes couldn't hold. The truck began rolling backwards downhill. Finally, he had managed to stop. But when he tried to go forward, the engine had stalled and the truck had rolled backwards again. He would get it started, the truck would go forward, then stall, then roll back. Everyone had been in anxiety. At last, the truck had started forward and the procession had continued all the way to the beach. Srila Prabhupada smiled. It was a pastime of Lord Jagannath's, he said. The same thing had happened when Lord Chaitanya had attended Ratha Yatra in Jagannatha Puri. Then also the cart had gotten stuck and no one had been able to move it. The king of Orissa had brought forward the most powerful wrestlers to push the cart and pull on the ropes, but it wouldn't go. Even the elephants couldn't move it. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had then put his head against the cart and pushed, and then only did the cart begin to move. Now Ratha Yatra had come to the west, and with it this pastime of Lord Jagannath's. Prabhupada noticed some devotees were missing. Where are Yamuna and Janaki, he asked. The devotees told him that some hippies had handed out candy spiked with LSD, and that a few of the devotees had unwittingly accepted it and were just now recovering. So they got spiked, means they got drugged, so they were recovering. Sabala related how after the festival, they had traveled out on the freeway in their flower-bedecked canopy-covered truck carrying 30 devotees and the deities Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram. They had driven up through the mountains in what must have been one of the most unusual vehicles ever seen. After all the visitors departed, deities remained in the house with Prabhupada and his servants. Prabhupada felt satisfied that his disciples had successfully held the Ratha Yatra festival. Although untrained, they were sincere. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Bhaktivinoda Thakur would have been pleased to see the first American Ratha Yatra. So even in Jagannatha Puri, to this day, they don't have brakes. And the chariots pulled, and if their lordships decide that they want to stop the chariot, it will stop. And no one will be able to move their chariot until they decide it's going to move. The 1 year, Balaram's chariot, and they pull it, naturally you'll see on top, they have the gongs, everyone's, hitting the gong, directing, giving directions, and the millions of people pulling the chariot. So they're pulling it in one direction, but Balaram's chariot decided to move in a different direction. And they're trying to pull it in the opposite direction, but the chariot's moving in the wrong direction. And it didn't want to stop. So then they had to, move all the poles and get, eventually, because there's electrical poles, and eventually they had to prepare so that the chariot doesn't crash into the pole. And just as it came close to the pole, it stopped and then moved away. So like that, the Lord has his pastimes with his chariots. And here also we see how the Lord was having his pastime with his Western chariot, first flatbed truck. No doubt Lord Jagannath accepted this because, as Prabhupada explained, they were sincere. He could see the sincerity, and Lord Jagannath reciprocated with their sincerity. Now, Srila Prabhupada's desires, Srila Prabhupada's vision. Prabhupada said, I have one disease, I cannot think small. So Prabhupada, he had a magnificent, huge vision. And here in this excerpt, we read Prabhupada sharing his vision. The whole world was in anxiety. So Prabhupada's speaking to the devotees. The whole world was in anxiety. Prabhupada explained to the devotees gathered in his room that evening, only in the spiritual world was there freedom from anxiety, because becoming free from all anxiety and returning to the spiritual world was the purpose of Krishna consciousness. The festival, like Ratha Yatra, made people Krishna conscious. Prabhupada had many, many ideas for the festival. If he had money and manpower, he said, he could have a festival every day. There was no limit to Krishna consciousness. Thus, Ratha Yatra festival was another sign of the good reception for Krishna consciousness in the West. So Prabhupada, he was ready to have a Ratha Yatra every single day. He writes to Ramananda in New York. The house is situated in an exceptionally nice spot, and the house itself is aristocratic. So there is nothing to complain about the house and place. The only difficulty is that I cannot go to the temple on account of the zigzag course of the road and crossing the mountains. Anyway, the devotees are coming here, and the Ratha Yatra festival was just performed with great pomp. More than 500 people followed the procession to the beach, and there were about 24 cars. They distributed thousands of chapatis, and at last Sri Jagannath, Subhadra, and Baladev kindly came here in the house and will stay here for 1 week and then return. this way, the first Ratha Yatra in the West was observed. And we see how the festival has improved year by year. So this was the first festival. And then in 1969, Prabhupada came back from India and attended that festival. Then in 1972, we see become even huge, even larger. And then 1974, Prabhupada attended that festival as well. So the festivals were becoming even more and more opulent. The Prabhupada was inspiring and encouraging the devotees. And this was the first time in San Francisco, and naturally all the devotees, whatever Prabhupada implemented in the different temples, it became like wildfire and spread all over the world. So no doubt every temple wanted to then start having Ratha Yatra, and the fever caught on, and Jagannath now Shri Jagannath Balarat Subhadra Maharani travels practically all over the planet. And it's interesting, in Sri Shopanishad, Srila Prabhupada also says that in future there will be interplanetary preaching. So that means Ratha Yatra will even go from the moon to Mars to other planets, believe it or not. Chanting 64 rounds. Now, waiting for sufficient strength to travel, Prabhupada continued his daily routine at Stinson Beach. 1 or 2 at a time, devotees would visit him from San Francisco, his morning walks on the beach. He's sitting to take in the sunshine whenever it peeked through the clouds. And in the evenings of Kirtan or reading in the living room, remained undisturbed and peaceful. Mukunda. I went on a walk on the beach with Swamiji, and when he sat down, I sat down opposite him. Then he asked me, "What is your definition of Krishna?" I said, "Krishna is God. He is the supreme being. Our duty is to worship him and serve him." Swamiji seemed fairly satisfied. And then he said, "You must chant 64 rounds per day on your beats." I was shocked at this and could not answer. I did not know if there was any need to answer. I just kept looking at him. I just kept looking at Swamiji, and he looked at me. After some time, he said, "Or at least you can chant 32 rounds a day." Still silence. I considered it to be very difficult to chant even 16 rounds. I was wondering how I could possibly chant 32 rounds. After some time, Swamiji said, "At the very least, you should chant 16 rounds every day." I said, "Yes, Swamiji." I knew that I could at least try to handle that much. So chanting 64 rounds, this was Prabhupada's desire when he went to the West. And no doubt, very, very difficult. Minimum 8 hours just chanting Hare Krishna. So therefore, Prabhupada, due to his compassionate nature, brought it down. But ultimately, the goal is to chant minimum 16 and to increase our attachment to chanting so that Kirtanya Sadahari, we can chant constantly. What are the 64 rounds? Prabhupada, in one conversation, Prabhupada said, what it was, not even 1,000 rounds, 10,000, 100,000 rounds. Means ultimately we want to become attached to chanting the holy name of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada's debates. Some evenings Prabhupada would speak or arrange debates. Although Kirtananda was constantly cautioning, when Prabhupada wanted to speak, it was impossible for any of his disciples to stop him. Sometimes he would ask Kirtananda to debate with one of the visiting devotees. One devotee would argue for the impersonalist or atheist position, and the other would argue for the Krishna conscious position. Prabhupada would judge. But no sooner would the argument begin than Prabhupada would interrupt, take the position of the devotee and defeat the atheist or the impersonalist argument. The devotees loved it. Prabhupada was unable to confine himself either to the role of a silent judge or to that of a recuperating patient. Why do you concentrate on the impersonalist? Kirtananda asked. Why do we attack them so much? Why don't we concentrate on the attack on the atheists? You say that because you are an impersonalist, Prabhupada answered angrily. On another occasion, Prabhupada explained that non-devotees who mislead the innocent public are demons and should be exposed. Kirtananda objected. If you call them demons, they'll never come around. But they are demons, Prabhupada replied. But we can't call them demons, Swamiji. Yes, they are demons. Unless you understand this point, you will not make any advancement in Krishna consciousness. Can demons become devotees? Kirtananda asked. Yeah, oh yes, Prabhupada answered. If they chant Hare Krishna and render service, even demons become devotees. So Prabhupada, he didn't hold back any punches. He would call a spade, and especially for impersonalists and the atheists, Prabhupada came, Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatadi Satarini, came specifically to defeat the impersonalists, the voidists, and the atheists. And Prabhupada wanted to establish Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a theistic philosophy. And Prabhupada challenged anyone that came with us a atheistic philosophy. I'll just share one time, Srila Prabhupada is sitting behind a desk, and Prabhupada was talking about the same point, that Krishna is, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the living entity is one with God and different from God. He is one with God in terms of quality, but different from God in terms of quantity. And Prabhupada was given an example of cotton ball and a cotton shirt. And Prabhupada was saying that there's a difference between cotton ball and a cotton shirt. Both is cotton, but in terms of form, it's different. So then there was a gentleman sitting right in front of Srila Prabhupada behind the desk. And the gentleman said, no, Swamiji, it's all one. And Prabhupada is now saying, no. There's a difference between cotton ball and a cotton shirt. Now, if you just look at a cotton ball and a cotton shirt, the cotton is very fluffy and a cotton shirt is structured. So there's a difference. And the gentleman said, no, Swamiji, it's all one. Cotton ball is same exactly cotton shirt. And Prabhupada started getting a little angry with this gentleman. At one point, Srila Prabhupada, raising his voice, he leaned over, grabbed the gentleman by his shirt and shook him. There's a difference between cotton ball and a cotton shirt. And the gentleman said, yes, Swamiji. And he got the point. And then Prabhupada continued. And then the devotees left. So after the devotees left, everybody left. Prabhupada told the devotees, you can't do that. An old man and a young boy can say something or do something, get away. You can't do that. So Prabhupada, he had his ways to get the point across for some people. He saved me. Devotees worried, speculating on whether they could carry on without Swamiji. So Prabhupada, he decided, he was telling the devotees that he has to go to India. And at some points, Prabhupada was also talking about leaving in Vrindavan. So the devotees were concerned. One devotee suggested that perhaps one of the Swamiji's godbrothers should come to America and fill in for Swamiji. And if the worst happened, take over the leadership of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. When the suggestion reached Prabhupada, he considered it without immediately replying. Mukunda, Prabhu says, I was sitting alone with Swamiji in his room, and he was very grave and silent. His eyes were closed. Then suddenly, tears began flowing from his eyes. And he said in a choked voice, my spiritual master was no ordinary spiritual master. Then suddenly tears began flowing from his eyes. And he said in a choked voice, my spiritual master was no ordinary spiritual master. Then he paused for some time, and wiping the tears from his cheeks, he said in an even more choked voice, he saved me. At that point, I began to understand the meaning of spiritual master and dropped all consideration of ever replacing Swamiji. After 2 days, Prabhupada said he would not call any of his god brothers to come and take care of his disciples. He said, if this person speaks just one word different from what I am speaking, there will be great confusion among you. Actually, he said, the idea was an insult to the spiritual master. So when the devotee shared this idea to Srila Prabhupada, he said that Srila Prabhupada did not chastise him. Srila Prabhupada revealed to him, by the way Srila Prabhupada responded of thinking about his own spiritual master and with tears in his eyes saying that my spiritual master was no ordinary person. Just by that, the devotee could appreciate that yes, this relationship is not ordinary between disciple and spiritual master. And this bond is eternal. And the spiritual master will always be there to guide. And Prabhupada encouraged the disciples that they can continue with whatever he has instructed them, they should continue. And Prabhupada here naturally warned that if anybody else had to come and just say something different, it would have created havoc and possibly break the whole society. So Prabhupada was very, very careful to protect what he had started, because he wanted Krishna consciousness to spread far and wide for the next 10,000 years. Srila Prabhupada decided to leave. Prabhupada told Kirtananda he had definitely decided to go to India via New York as soon as possible. Kirtananda packed Swamiji's things and drove Swamiji down to San Francisco to spend the night at the temple. They would leave the next morning. The temple and even Prabhupada's apartment were very hectic that night, with many devotees and guests wanting to see Prabhupada and dozens of people wanting initiation. When Kirtananda advised Prabhupada not to exert himself by going down for the evening program, Prabhupada insisted on at least going and sitting during the Kirtan. When he entered the storefront, the devotees immediately stopped the Kirtan, dropping down to offer obeisances. There was a hush. He commanded a new reverence. This might have been the last time they would see him. They watched him during the Kirtan as he played his kartals, singing with them for the last time. The uninitiated wanted to accept him as their spiritual master tonight, before it was too late. Srila Prabhupada asked for the microphone. No one had expected him to speak. Kirtananda, the only person in a position to restrain him, said nothing and sat before him like the others, submissive and expectant. Prabhupada spoke quietly about his mission. Under the order of his spiritual master, he was bringing Lord Chaitanya's movement to America, and Krishna had kindly sent him so many sincere souls. Quote, I have a few children in India from my family days, he said, but you are my real children. Now I am going to India for a little while. Everyone fixed his attention on Swamiji as he sat before them, leaning against the madras covered wall, speaking softly. Suddenly the door opened and Ravindra Sarup unhappily entered. Everyone knew that Ravindra Sarup wanted to leave Krishna consciousness. He hadn't taken his initiation vow seriously. He wanted to move on. He didn't want a spiritual master anymore, and other devotees had discouraged him, but he had persisted. They were incredulous. How could he do such a thing on the night before Swamiji's departure? Ravindra Sarup fell to the floor to offer obeisances, but he didn't rise up. Instead, he began crawling on his hands and knees towards Prabhupada. Ravindra usually had a chevalier manner, enhanced with a handsome face, long tousled hair, and a beard. But now he was wretched and sobbing and crazy. He crawled towards Prabhupada, who sat but 2 steps off the floor on a simple redwood dais. Prabhupada looked at him with compassion. Come here, my boy. Ravindra crawled up the steps and placed his bushy heads on Prabhupada's lap. Moved, the devotees watched as Prabhupada stroked Ravindra's head, and the boy cried and cried. What was wrong, my son? You don't have to be unhappy, so unhappy. Ravindra bawled out. I want, he sobbed, to reach God directly, without anyone in between. Prabhupada continued to pet and stroke the boy's head. No, you continue to stay with us if possible. Don't be a crazy fellow. Ravindra's weeping subsided, and Prabhupada continued speaking to both Ravindra and to his emotion-struck group in the room. So Prabhupada was very, very compassionate. Prabhupada's principle was not to reject, but to reform. No matter who the individual was, Prabhupada always wanted to help. And here we see Ravindra Srila Prabhupada had a issue, and the issue was he wanted to have a direct relationship with God. And that is not possible. The relationship with God has to be via the devotees, the servants of the Lord. We find even when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was going on parikram, then the disciples went to go see one Ram, great exalted Ram devotee. Apparently they thought he was a great exalted Ram devotee. And he would glorify Lord Ram, he would shed tears of ecstasy. And they came back to the temple and they asked Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj that Guru Maharaj, please come see this great exalted Ram Bhakta. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, okay, you go ask him whether his relationship with Lord Ram is direct or indirect. So they went and they asked him, is your relation with Lord Ram direct or indirect? And he said, my relation with Lord Ram is direct. And they came to Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj and they told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, my relation is direct. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, bogus. That means it's not a pure devotee. Because you cannot have a relation directly with Krishna. Completely bogus. So Prabhupada, this was an anartha that Ravindra Swarup had, and he wanted a direct relationship. But Prabhupada was compassionate, and Ravindra Swarup obviously leaves. But Prabhupada continues, and he says, I am an old man, he said. I may die at any moment, but please, you all carry on the Sankirtan movement. You have to become humble and tolerant. As Lord Chaitanya says, be as humble as a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. You must have enthusiasm and patience to push on this Krishna conscious philosophy. Suddenly Ravindra's tears were gone. He jumped up, dejectedly stood hesitantly for a moment, and then hurried out of the door, began banging it behind him. So he leaves, but then he comes back later on. So we all go through these moments where we have anarthas and we're wondering, are they insurmountable or what? But by following the process of Krishna consciousness, every anartha can be overcome. Because by surrendering to the process of Krishna consciousness, we are surrendering to the divine energy, Srimati Radhavani. And she is very compassionate. And by her mercy, she can purify us of every anartha. And here Prabhupada is encouraging his disciples to continue preaching, to continue the Sankirtan movement, a very, very, very important service for the welfare of this planet. So now Prabhupada decides leaving to New York. This was, in fact, should have been a little earlier. Next morning, Prabhupada had to leave his affectionate followers. Several cars filled with devotees accompanying him to San Francisco airport. Nandarani says, some were sincere, and yeah, it's correct. So the sequence is correct. So our Prabhupada comes at San Francisco airport. Now he's going to leave to New York because Prabhupada said he's going to actually leave to India from New York. Some were sincere and some were crying because it was appropriate to cry when the spiritual master leaves. Actually, none of us really knew much about what spiritual master was. Janaki mischievously stole the ticket and passport from Prabhupada's hand. Now you can't go, she said. And you see here's a picture of Mother Janaki. She stole the passport and picture from Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada turns to her and says, that's all right. He smiled. I already have my boarding ticket. I'm an Indian. They will let me into my own country. Prabhupada turned to his adoring followers gathered close around him at the boarding gate. Actually, I have only one desire, and whoever does this will please me very much. Now, I have a temple in New York in Montreal and a temple in San Francisco, but I do not have any temple in Los Angeles. He told them to remain in Krishna consciousness and to please preach. They watched as he turned, walked through the gates, his cane in one hand, boarding pass in the other. Hare Krishna mantra, big cannon. In New York, there was hardly time for sadness. Srila Prabhupada telegraphed Sri Krishna Pandit that his arrival in Delhi would be on July 24th at 7:30 a.m. and that Sri Krishna Pandit should prepare Prabhupada's quarters at Chipi Vada Temple. In the telegram, Prabhupada mentioned his intention to consult a physician in Delhi, then go to Vrindavan. He was anxious to return to Vrindavan. Achyutananda told Prabhupada he wanted to go to India to study intensively, gather experience and become attached to Krishna. He had heard Prabhupada say that one could become more Krishna conscious in 2 days in Vrindavan than in 10 years in America. Do you think I'll be able to go? Achyutananda asked. Rest assured, Prabhupada told him, we will meet again in Vraja. The devotees had been asking Satsarup to transfer his civil service job to Boston and open a Krishna conscious center there. They had also asked Rupanuga to do the same in Buffalo. Satsarup and Rupanuga approached Prabhupada to find out what he wanted. He became very pleased. Subal was going to open up a center in Santa Fe, he said, and Dayananda was going to Los Angeles. Hare Krishna mantra is like a big cannon, he told them. Go and sound this cannon so everyone can hear it. It will drive away Maya. The devotees wanted to ask, but what if you don't return? They were fearful. What if Krishna kept Swamiji in Vrindavan? What if Swamiji never returned? How could they survive against Maya? But Swamiji had already assured them that whatever Krishna consciousness he had given them would be enough, even if he never returned. Grandfather is more merciful. Just 30 minutes before he had to leave for the airport, Prabhupada sat in his room chanting on his beads of a girl who had just asked to be initiated. Then, as he had done many times before, he left his apartment, went downstairs, crossed the courtyard, and entered the storefront. Sitting on the old carpet, he spoke quietly and personally. I may be going, but Guru Maharaj and Bhakti Vinod are here. He looked towards the paintings of his spiritual master and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I have asked them to kindly take care of all of you, my spiritual children. The grandfather always takes care of the children much better than the father. So do not fear. There is no question of separation. The sound vibration fixes us up together, even though the material body may not be there. What do we care for this material body? Just go on chanting Hare Krishna, and we will be packed up together. You will be chanting here, and I will be chanting there. This vibration will circulate around this planet. So Prabhupada is encouraging his disciples. One time, Srila Prabhupada, in a discussion, he was telling the disciples, I have no business to come here, and you have no business to come to me. The only business is Krishna. That's why. Because Krishna is our only business. Therefore, Prabhupada said he had come to America, and the disciples, our followers, had come to him. So Prabhupada is encouraging his disciples that their mercy will be there because the grandfather is more merciful. One time, Srila Prabhupada was staying in the temple in Hawaii, and the devotees were serving Srila Prabhupada, and Kartikeya was cooking for Srila Prabhupada. He was a very exceptional cook, and he was cooking for Srila Prabhupada. And generally, when it rains, Prabhupada liked to have hot halva cooked in semolina called farina. So Kartikeya, he knew how to cook that halva for Srila Prabhupada. So one day, Mother Malati came, Mother Govinda Dasi came and bought wheat germ, which was like a healthy version of semolina. And Kartikeya was very happy that, wow, next time when Prabhupada wants halva, I'm going to cook with wheat germ. because it's very healthy. He'll offer it and Prabhupada will be very happy. So sure enough, the day came, it was raining, and Prabhupada asked for halwa. So Kartikeya was very excited. He took this health product called wheat germ, made the halwa, went, offered it very nicely, took it to Prabhupada in his room with a bowl filled with halwa. And he came to Srila Prabhupada and he offered it to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada looked at it, and with his left hand, Prabhupada said, "What is this?" Now in India, if you want to politely say no, you say with your right hand. If you want to rudely say no, then you use your left hand. So Prabhupada used his left hand, which meant like he was really upset. And he said, "What is this?" Halwa means with farina, means with semolina. And Prabhupada rejected it. So Prabhupada didn't want it. And Kartikeya was so heartbroken. He left the room, started crying, and went into the temple room. He sat in front of the altar. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's picture was there, and he started to speak. And he said, "I was simply trying to please your disciple. I just wanted to offer this so nicely to my spiritual master, your son, and he's very upset." And Kartikeya was crying, heartbroken, didn't know what to do. Then all of a sudden, in the room, he heard, "Kartikeya, Kartikeya." And Kartikeya immediately sobered up, went into the room. "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, where's that halwa? Bring the halwa." So he was a little surprised, a little shocked, but anyway, he said, "Okay." So he ran to the kitchen, brought the halwa. Prabhupada ate the whole bowl. "Bring more." He went back into the kitchen, filled the halwa, came. Prabhupada ate all the halwa. "Bring more." Prabhupada finished the whole pot. And Kartikeya was totally surprised. And then he realized what had happened. As Prabhupada says here, the grandfather is more merciful. So for Kartikeya, Prabhupada is the spiritual father, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj is his grandfather. So naturally, when he revealed his heart to his grandfather, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, his grandfather must have spoken to Srila Prabhupada and said, "How can you do this?" So immediately that reciprocation happened, and Prabhupada then called for the halwa and ate everything. So we should, for us, Srila Prabhupada is our grandfather. Therefore, we should know that the grandfather is more merciful than the father. And whenever we're in difficulty, whenever we need shelter, support, we can go, rest assured, we can go to Srila Prabhupada and pray to Srila Prabhupada. In fact, Srila Prabhupada is the one that's really saving us, that's protecting us, that's guiding us. And we should have a firm faith in that. So Prabhupada is encouraging his disciples that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur would be there and protect them. Left that place, several devotees rode with Prabhupada in a taxi, Brahmananda in the front with the driver, Rayaram and Kirtananda in the back besides their spiritual master. When Kirtananda sees Vrindavan, Prabhupada said, "He will not be able to understand how I could have left that place and come to this place. It is so nice. There are no motor cars like here, rushing, whoosh, whoosh, and smelling. Only there is Hare Krishna. Everybody is always chanting. Thousands and thousands of temples. I will show you, Kirtananda. You will walk all about them, and I will show you." Brahmananda began to cry, and Prabhupada patted him on the back. "I can understand that you are feeling separation," he said. "I'm feeling for my Guru Maharaj. I'm feeling for my Guru Maharaj. I think this is what Krishna desires. You may be coming there to me and be trained up, and we will spread this movement all over the world. Rayaram, you will go to England. Brahmananda, you will go to Japan or Russia. That's all right." The devotees converge on Air India waiting room near a crowded cocktail lounge. Wearing a sweater, his chadar folded neatly over his shoulder, Prabhupada sat in a chair. His disciples sat as closely as possible around his feet. He held an umbrella just as when he had first come alone to New York 2 years ago. Although exhausted, he was smiling. And here we see a nice picture of Prabhupada with his disciples, Kirtananda in like a suit. He was traveling with Srila Prabhupada to India. Crying in separation. When the record, Srila Prabhupada sat with the disciples and told Hamsadutta to play. It was a recording Kirtan for everyone that was sitting there, and he played it. And when the record ended, Hamsadutta asked, Swamiji, can I take a collection? Prabhupada nodded. Hamsadutta stood up and made a little speech. Our mission is to spread Krishna consciousness. We have a temple in New York. We are all always badly in need of money. Please help us. Borrowing a hat from a soldier, Hamsadutta went around taking collection. Our traveling is very auspiciously beginning, Prabhupada said. We had a nice kirtan, we had a nice collection. It's all Krishna's mercy. Then it was time to board the plane. Prabhupada embraced each of his men. They stood in a line, and one after another approached him and embraced him. He petted a few of the women on their head. Accompanied by Kirtananda, whose head was shaven and who wore an incongruous black woolen suit, Prabhupada walked slowly towards the gate. As it disappeared from the view, the devotees ran for the observation deck to get a last look at his departing plane. A gentle rain was washing the airfields as the devotees raced across the wet observation deck. There below were Prabhupada and Kirtananda, walking towards their plane, abandoning decorum. The devotees began to shout. Prabhupada turned and waved. He climbed the movable stairway, turning again at the top and raising his arms, and then entered the plane. The devotees chanted wildly while the boarding steps moved away, the doors closed, and the plane began to turn. The devotees had pressed close to the rail, but they pulled back as the jet exhaust blasted them with heat. With great roar, the Air India jet, lights blinking, takes it out to the runaway. Devotees continued to chant Hare Krishna until the plane left the ground, became a speck in the sky, and then disappeared. So no doubt a unfortunate situation for the devotees, but they had great faith in Srila Prabhupada's instructions, and they prayed that Srila Prabhupada come back to help them become more Krishna conscious and expand the mission. And no doubt Srila Prabhupada went to Vrindavan because Vrindavan's weather was very conducive for Srila Prabhupada's health, and he could also get Ayurvedic treatment. And here we have another picture of Srila Prabhupada on November 24th, 1967. Srila Prabhupada returned to America, and a new spirit and impetus to spread Krishna consciousness appeared in ISKCON. So Prabhupada, his health rejuvenated and continued spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. And here we see the temple of the current temple, ISKCON San Francisco, New Jagannatha Puri. They actually moved address. So here's the outside of the temple. Here are the beautiful deities, Jagannath, Balada, Subhadra Maharani, and they also have Gonita and small Radha Krishna deities, and this is Srila Prabhupada. So the temple, has continued, and even Ratha Yatra festival has continued from 1966 right up to today. And that brings us to the end of this wonderful chapter. Srila Swamiji departs. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for this mind-blowing presentation. I'm really carried away with the wonderful photos and cliches that you've shared with us. Thank you so much. It really created that special mood of like we were there.
Thank you.
So dear devotees, here we are. Srila Prabhupada stayed 2 years out of India, and now he's going back to India first a moment of separation from the American devotees with Srila Prabhupada, and we'll be getting more nectar soon. So I'm requesting now devotees who wishes to ask any question to please click on their virtual hand so that I can unmute you, so that to be able to comment or leave a question. Thank you. Okay, Mataji Kiran is saying, oh, some words are not enough to express. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Mataji Kiran. Yes, devotees. Okay, we have Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna Das Prabhu. Hare Krishna, please unmute. And yes.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for nice presentations, especially with pictures and video. I've never seen that video, and it's really, really wonderful how the devotees are chanting in blissfully. It's amazing presentation. Just like Prabhuji said, you know, very nicely presented, and we are thankful for you for the presentations once again.
Thank you very much. Yes, that video I was trying to see and Googling, and it so happened that Garga Muni Prabhu had posted that on his Facebook chat, and it was amazing to see that Kirtan. Naturally, it's inexplicable to understand what they were experiencing. No doubt some of them had LSD, but even with the LSD, they were transported to the spiritual world. Like we mentioned, when the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, what is the spiritual world like? And Prabhupada said, it's like swimming in an ocean of LSD. So naturally, that's the experience. And here's something that practically blows the roof, right, completely out. There is no end to it. So the devotees naturally had that, and especially by Prabhupada's presence, in the early years, the concentration, the mercy, the power, that you could see the devotees experiencing that. So yes, very wonderful clip. Yeah, thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Das Prabhu. So we have Hemavati Radhika Devi Dasi Mataji, who is writing very beautiful and wonderful class. Makes us want to hear more and more and more. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much, Mother Hemavati Radhika.
So we are also, we'll be sharing Prabhu's links where he's giving weekly classes. Devotees can join in to get a lot of nectars. We have Ajay Chaitanya Prabhu whose hand is raised. So please, Prabhu, unmute and you can intervene.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for this presentation. Yes, Prabhu, you talk about Jagannatha Prabhu. I know that Srila Prabhupada requested that we have to put his picture on all the Ratha Yatras that we are doing on the card. But perhaps you mentioned something that we have to, he's a first, his consent, and should we observe his appearance in these appearances, something like that you said? Perhaps I'll get you right.
Yes, so definitely Prabhupada's instruction was that we must observe his disappearance days. So just like how we have, disappearance of any of the previous acharyas, Pushpanjali, and have a disappearance festival, we should have the same celebration for Jagannatha Prabhu's, for his disappearance. We can glorify him. There is a book written by the devotees, different pastimes so we can share that. We can give a talk on his glories, have a feast, Pushpanjali, and then celebrate. So we should definitely do that. There's amazing. If you hear some of these pastimes, it's just exceptional. There's actually a class that Madhu Dasi did I'll send the link to you. You can post it for the devotees for Ratha Yatra festival. And I heard one pastime. So Jagannatha Puri, he had a heart of gold. In so many ways he was exceptional. When Prabhupada's desire was that every day. We had the funds. Every day we would have Ratha Yatra, would have a festival. Jayananda was like that. Every day was a festival, in his presence. And one time he went, he would always be, he would distribute prasadam. So one time he went, there was a devotee who was in the temple, and the devotee left, and he became a butcher. So he was running a butchery shop. And in the back of the butchery, he was busy cutting, blood, cutting flesh. And Jayananda would go regularly to distribute prasad to him. He would take the prasad, go into the butchery, go right to the back, and when he would meet this devotee, he would embrace him. With all the blood, he wouldn't even bother. The blood was not even a consideration. He would embrace him with so much love and then say, "Here, Prabhu, I brought you some Mahaprasada." And because of this, because naturally, we would think, I don't even go into the butchery.
Yeah.
There's the smell and the blood, and then I have to touch this devotee. I mean, like, he's not even a devotee. That's my consciousness would be like that, but not with Jayananda. Jayananda, and this touch, this devotee, this is how he would attract so many souls. There was the lady that would give permission for the Ratha Yatra cart procession. So when Jayananda left, next year, another devotee went to request permission. And she said, what she called, they called him, there was another name, I think Johnny Ananda. There was another name that.
John Cole.
Yeah, so she says, she said, where's Jayananda? And the devotee explained, well, he left this world. And she just broke out crying. Yeah, she was so touched by his personality that she broke out crying. So Jayananda, he really transformed. He really, wherever he went. So yes, it's a great fortune to glorify every devotee, and no doubt Jayananda. So we should take that opportunity, and as per Prabhupada's instruction, we should have a festival.
Yeah, I don't think we have been doing that, huh?
Yeah, but we should introduce it. It's there. It's Prabhupada's letter. We should do it.
I've read some of his pastimes in a book by Vaishika Prabhu.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But what you're saying is above what I've read.
Exceptional. After Prabhupada left, it's interesting, when Prabhupada left to India, the enthusiasm of the devotees to spread Krishna consciousness never waned. In fact, they only had one pair of cartels. So the devotees decided we need to make more cartels. So they took this sample of cartels, they started researching where they could go, who's expert, and finally they found one gentleman to make the cartels. They made 100 sets of cartels in the West. So it was also immediately after Prabhupada left, the next month, they made 100 sets, which was also the first set of cartels in the West. And they had collected brass from all over, put it in a truck, and they took it to this person to actually mold the cartels. The devotee said it wasn't the best, but it managed. And then they took about 90 of them, they put it in the shop, they sold the cartels. And then the others they kept for the devotees. So the devotees really had a passion to spread Krishna consciousness. There was no barriers. They loved Prabhupada, they wanted to please Prabhupada. And we see here, we read also how the devotees were going to different places to open up. And Prabhupada encouraged them to do that, because he knew if you're sincere, you will be inspired and encouraged by the super soul. Krishna will inspire you. And Prabhupada said, all you need is 5 people, 5 sincere devotees, and you can open up a center anywhere. Those 5 sincere devotees will work like 5, therefore you got 25. Thank you.
And yeah, and many centers were opened by only one devotee.
Yes,
Yeah.
Krishna sent.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you, Ajay Chaitanya Prabhu. We have also Jagannatha Priya Das who wrote, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for a most transcendental class, relishing all the nectar. Thank you also for being here, Prabhu. And I was also when Prabhu was speaking, when Prabhupada said we need to have festivals every day. Prior to that, I was thinking, in Mauritius we have Ratha Yatras each 2 and 3 months, and for me it was too much. But when I see what Prabhupada said, I'm thinking, Prabhupada's compared to a Prabhupada expectation, we are so lag behind. So
Yes.
thank you so much.
And
yeah,
and
Vidura
and
Prabhu. Yes.
yeah,
Swamiji.
and also the festival, Prabhupada's concept of the festival and the idea of the festival is to attract new souls. So the festival wasn't so much, the festival is not so much for the devotees to enjoy, right? Just like Sunday feast is meant to be a festival, which means it's not meant for lunch for the devotees. It's meant to attract new souls and to expose new people to Krishna consciousness. That's what the festival, Sunday feast, all the festivals are meant. And in many places, unfortunately, we spend a lot of money for the festival and very little for advertising. And here we see how I showed you certain posters, right? So the devotees, even during, and it wasn't easy, they didn't have debit orders, they didn't have monthly subscription, life members, no, right? Yet they still advertised. Handwritten posters, advertising. Why? Because if you don't advertise, don't attract. So both, we need to be there advertising, and we have to understand that it's for attracting new people. And if we do this, Krishna will make that festival even more super excellent. The mercy, the potency, everything will be even more powerful. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much for these enlightening words, especially when you speak of advertising. It's true. We should not be satisfied with the devotees that we have. We need to have more people, more newcomers, and that's
Yes.
only for advertisement. So we have Vidura Das Prabhu who's waiting. Prabhuji, can you please unmute? And here we go, Vidura Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you again for a wonderful class. And I was listening and viewing with rapt attention. Okay, so I was reading and two things strike me. I wanted to ask to make comment on this. How is it possible that Ravindra Swarup, after so much association with Srila Prabhupada, still we find it sneak out from the movement? Sneak out from the movement. And I could understand that you told that he returned back again. This one made me happy that he returned back again. I was wondering once he sneak out. Secondly, when we read all the Lilamrta, we get inspired and we try to emulate Srila Prabhupada's teaching. Yet we find that many, they have this association with Srila Prabhupada, and still there's little or no transformation which takes place. How can we explain this?
Thank you, Prabhu. So your first question is how come someone who has a lot of association can leave? So I don't know all the variables. No one knows all the variables of any devotee besides Krishna. And therefore, we don't know why they leave. But Prabhupada made it very clear that if somebody leaves, then it's also our fault. And we can always use, or we can always understand that these are examples of great exalted souls. Anyone who came in contact with Prabhupada was no ordinary person. And therefore, it's a lesson for us that we should never take the association for granted. Just like, Srila Haridas Thakur, he was being whipped, right? Or many others, many great devotees, it apparently seems like they're having difficulty, but it's actually lessons for us. Arjuna, it seems like he was in illusion, but he was put into illusion by Krishna to teach us. So like that, many souls that came with Srila Prabhupada, we can appreciate and learn from their experience. And in this case, we can learn that, yes, even though we may be very, very close, if we have an anartha, that anartha can pull us away. At the same time, the doors are always open. Prabhupada never, ever closed a door on anyone. In fact, Prabhupada was even happy to engage someone that was not following. Prabhupada came to Los Angeles, and there was a restaurant there. So the devotees working in the restaurant, Madame Makela, they were receiving Prabhupada. So there was this devotee who would come to the restaurant very often, and he wasn't following, he wasn't practicing, was breaking the principles, he left, but he would regularly visit the restaurant. So one day he visited the restaurant, and it so happened that day Prabhupada came to visit. And he noticed Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada noticed him. And Prabhupada, the devotees didn't want Prabhupada to go to him and try to distract Prabhupada to the temple, but Prabhupada walked straight to him. And Prabhupada spoke to him and said, you like to cook for me? And the devotees, nudged Prabhupada, said, Prabhupada, but it's not following regular principles, And Prabhupada said, you like to cook for me? See, so Prabhupada was very, very compassionate. Your point of, your second question was in relation to?
So how is it possible that no transformation takes place?
Yes. So the transformation does take place. It may be very slight, or may take a long time, right? But no doubt it does. The example is given of the three modes that act in different ways. So for example, if I got wet grass, and if I administer fire on that wet grass, the fire is extinguished. And we may say, well, the fire didn't do anything, but it did. It moistened the grass. So from wet grass, it became moist. Now you administer more fire, and it starts to smoke. And we think fire didn't do anything, but it did. It makes the moist grass dry. Now you administer fire, and now it burns. And now you say, oh, see, the fire worked. But no, the fire worked right from wet grass to moist grass and to dry grass. But your external perspective is that, oh, it only worked when it burned. So like that, no matter who, if somebody is in Krishna consciousness, it's you getting purified. But it may be that you still have an anchor. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj gave the example of the wedding party that they wanted to go across, right? And the man was rowing whole night.
Right.
And morning they were still there. Why? Because the anchor wasn't pulled. So the anchor of sense gratification must be removed.
Yes.
And we know one of the offense to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. So it's an offense to hold on. And therefore it seems like you're not making advancement. Right? We need to let go the sense gratification. Then we'll have remove the anchor, then you'll go. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. You make it's so many difficult questions become so easy and understandable. Thank you so much. And we'll take one last question because it's getting late also. So I will recommend Ajay Chaitanya Prabhu to please unmute. and ask his question. Thank you.
It is not a question, but only I refer to what Prabhu Vidur was saying, like this, according to Prabhu Bashu Ghosh, who makes the presentation last time, he said that this Ravindra Swarup and our now the Ravindra Swarup are two different persons.
Okay.
That's the same. Right? But we have the devotees who have, even during Prabhupada times and even after, devotees come, go, and can then come back. We have so many.
Yeah, like Shamsundar Prabhu left and came. So they
Oh,
may
yeah.
be.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll give you one more. So one devotee joined in the early 60s, very early, 26 Second Avenue time. And then he left. So he left away completely, fell away and drifted away. And he landed up in another state in the streets as a tramp in the streets, homeless. And the devotees in that area, years later, many years later, they were doing Harinam. And this, the ex-devotee, you could say, he was intoxicated, unconscious, lying in the street. And these devotees from the temple, they said, let's go up on Harinam. So they took one of the Maharaji's there, decided, I'm going to take Prabhupada's Mag, I'm going to take Prabhupada's Galan. So she went into the temple room and took Prabhupada's Galan. And she was going with the Harinam party. And wherever she was going, she was taking a petal and of the flower from the Galan and offering to people as Mahaprasad. Okay. So they were going, Harinam party was going, and she noticed this person unconscious, right, on the sidewalk, lying there. So she thought, okay, I have to give him some mercy. So she pulled the petal out, flower petal, and she dropped it on him. So he was lying flat on his chest, on his back, and she dropped the petal. And she dropped the petal and she carried on walking because he was unconscious. So she just dropped it and she carried on walking. She walked a few steps. And as she walked a few steps, he got up and he said, Jai Prabhupada. And she was shocked. She like, what? So she turned around and she came to him and says, you know Prabhupada? And the man said, yes, I joined 26 Second Avenue. Right? And she was totally surprised and they started speaking. And then she realized the power of Mahaprasad, the power of association. That even here's someone who left Prabhupada, just like once you become a devotee, you can't undo yourself as a devotee. Right? Your life, your material life is finished. So even this devotee who fell away was unconscious, that Mahaprasad association revived him. Yeah. So we should always remember, right? The power of association can always bring anyone back. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki.
And the power of associating with you gives us the desire to listen more and more. And I will just extend my heartfelt thanks to you for giving us a chance to hear from you and to relish Prabhupada's pastimes here. So again, thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you to Mataji also, and all the devotees who've helped for this session to take place. With these few words, dear devotees, I would thank you also for being here nearly every session. And our next session now on Saturday. And Saturday we are having another devotee from the same continent, Africa. So we will be welcoming this Saturday His Grace Srivasa Das Vanachari from Ghana. Prabhuji will be speaking as we just left Prabhupada in the plane. Prabhupada is flying already. So we'll be inviting Srivasa to welcome Srila Prabhupada in India now on Saturday. So it will be on volume 3, chapter 6, and the title is India Revisited Part 1. So dear devotees, let's, if you really enjoyed tonight's class, you really learned something, then please share the good news, share the message. share the links so that we can share Srila Prabhupada's pastime to one and everyone. So also we've just shared Prabhu's Chant Life Academy with the links and passwords for the classes. Please, you can note it down, or we will send it also on our WhatsApp group. You will get it there. With these few words, dear devotees, we'll request everyone to please unmute yourself and then switch on your camera, please, to chant one Mahamantra and offer our obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis present here and everywhere.
Ashika,
Yes, yes, Ru?
you missed to. Okay, we can do that in the WhatsApp group about the link, the email address for the offerings.
Yes.
You have it? Or we can put it in the WhatsApp group.
I'll put it on the WhatsApp.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so dear devotees, please unmute and we'll have one Mahamantra and Vanchakalpa to offer obeisance to everyone. Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Antakoti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Ki Jai, Das Prabhu Ki Jai. So dear viewers, please stay safe and see you on this Saturday. So here we are with the Vyasa Puja offering. Please know that the final date is 21st of June to send the offerings. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, please send the links on the WhatsApp group, please.
Yes, yes, Prabhu, we'll do the needful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. See you.
Thank you.